Today, the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea and I are announcing a major initiative to combat the scourge of people smuggling. Today, we are announcing a new resettlement arrangement between Australia and Papua New Guinea. From now on, any asylum seeker who arrives in Australia by boat will have no chance of being settled in Australia as refugees. Asylum seekers taken to Christmas Island will be sent to Manus and elsewhere in Papua New Guinea for assessment of their refugee status. If they are found to be genuine refugees, they will be resettled in Papua New Guinea, an emerging economy with a strong future, a robust democracy, which is also a signatory to the United Nations Refugees Convention. If they are found not to be genuine refugees, they may be repatriated to their country of origin or be sent to a safe third country other than Australia. These arrangements are contained within the regional resettlement arrangement signed by myself and the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea just now. Under this RRA, the arrangement between Australia and PNG will apply for the next 12-month period and be subject to annual review by the joint Australia-Papua New Guinea Ministerial Forum. Critically, this RRA does not specify an absolute limit to the number of asylum seekers who can be transferred or genuine refugees who can be resettled. Our expectation, and the expectation of our officials, is as this regional resettlement arrangement is implemented and the message is sent loud and clear back up the pipeline, that the number of boats will decline over time as asylum seekers then make recourse to other, more normal UNHCR processes to have their claims assessed. In the period ahead, our governments intend to make sure that the message is delivered loud and clear to people smuggling networks around the world and those criminal elements within Australia who may be supporting them, that the hopes that they offer their customers for the future are nothing but false hopes. Australia will continue its cooperative arrangements on people smuggling with the Republic of Nauru and looks forward to furthering those arrangements in the future. I understand that this is a very hard-line decision. I understand that different groups in Australia and around the world will see this decision in different ways. But our responsibility as a government is to ensure that we have a robust system of border security and orderly migration on the one hand, as well as fulfilling our legal and compassionate obligations under the Refugees Convention on the other. Therefore, it is important for me to make clear to all concerned how the government, after lengthy internal deliberation with all relevant ministers and agencies and with our PNG counterparts, have sought to get this balance right. Number one, this decision today is part of the government's framework for a multi-layered approach to dealing with the scourge of people smuggling, and doing so within, not outside, the legal framework of the Convention. Critically, the Convention requires us not to send genuine refugees back to the countries they have fled from, and in this arrangement we honour that undertaking. The Convention requires us to provide proper humane treatment of people. Under this arrangement we will do so. And also under this arrangement, asylum seekers who are determined to be genuine refugees will have therefore a country of settlement, namely Papua New Guinea. Number two, at a global level, this morning I also spoke with the United Nations Secretary-General and indicated that Australia would be convening an international conference of relevant transit countries and destination countries within the framework of the Refugees Convention to deliberate on how to improve current global international arrangements in two respects. Firstly, the adequacy of processing systems and centres around the world, and, as well as that, how do we best have a better arrangement for Australia, Canada, US and other countries to deal with the resettlement burden around the world. Number three, Australia sees this as a regional resettlement arrangement between Australia and Papua New Guinea, and therefore is part of our broader approach on regional cooperative arrangements in Southeast Asia and the South Pacific on people smuggling. In this regard, we will seek to develop further regional arrangements within this framework over time through the mechanism already agreed between Australia and Indonesia for a ministerial conference of immigration ministers and foreign ministers to be held next month in Indonesia. Number four, as also discussed in Indonesia, we will also be working with regional partners on visa arrangements for certain countries around the world that have become source countries for the outflow of irregular people movements. In this area, I have noted reports from Jakarta today on forthcoming arrangements from the Indonesian government on visa arrangements for Iranians. Number five, Australia is also reviewing its own national assessment procedures for dealing with refugee determination arrangements within Australia, and whether these are appropriately benchmarked with other national jurisdictions around the world, and whether these need to be changed. Australians are people with hard heads but also with a kind and compassionate heart. I wish to emphasise that Australia will continue to take large numbers of genuine refugees through our existing global humanitarian program. Recently, the government increased our intake from 13,000 to 20,000 per annum. These refugees are people who have languished in UN camps around the world for years, and in some cases for more than a decade. These refugees Australia will continue to help as part of our humanitarian responsibilities to the international community. Should the international conference I referred to earlier in the week on global resettlement practices be successful, and if we also see the successful implementation of the RRA announced today, Australia stands ready to consider progressively increasing the number of places in the humanitarian program as recommended by the Houston panel. Many Australians will also be concerned about the proper and humane treatment of both asylum seekers and genuine refugees under the RRA. The government is fully mindful of its obligations under international and domestic law. This is no trivial matter. The Minister for Immigration will be releasing a subsequent statement on the proper treatment of asylum seekers and refugees under this arrangement, in particular the proper protection of unaccompanied minors and families with children. The government's fully mindful of the UNHCR report on Manus, and as I said earlier this week in Moresby, as the Manus facility is developed further over time, we intend to ensure that all proper requirements are met, and this will take time. Furthermore, on the question of the settlement of genuine refugees, with their status having been determined in Papua New Guinea, the Australian Government, in support of the PNG Government, will provide comprehensive settlement services to ensure that these refugees can live safely and with security and in time prosperity within PNG. I want to be clear with everyone, both within Australia and Papua New Guinea, that Prime Minister Peter O'Neill has decided to help Australia with a problem we face, the problem of people smuggling. And Peter, I thank you for that. I thank you as a friend, I thank you as a fellow Prime Minister and as a neighbour. I also thank the Prime Minister for having raised his willingness to do more in cooperation on people smuggling when we met in Brisbane only a couple of weeks ago. And our conversations since then have been based on that initial encounter. I want to be equally clear with people in Australia and PNG that our government is also helping Papua New Guinea deal with the problems they face. That's what friends are for, and that's what friends do for each other, and we make no apology for that. Australia has been PNG's strongest development partner for decades. Earlier this week in Moresby, I agreed with the Prime Minister that we would help PNG in a number of important areas. The Prime Minister and I have also discussed the important work we can do in the area of health and hospitals. We've agreed that Australia will now help with the redevelopment of the major referral hospital in Lae and its long-term management needs. We've agreed to fund 50-50 the reform of Papua New Guinea university sector, including next year by implementing the recommendations of the Australia-PNG Education Review. We've also agreed to help PNG with the support they have sought in professional management teams in the health, education and law and order portfolios. And Australia, Prime Minister, stands ready to assist PNG further with other development needs in the future. The RRA that Papua New Guinea and Australia are announcing today represents one part of a comprehensive response to the challenge of people smuggling. Some will say it's too hard line, others will say it's inadequate, and we should simply jettison the Refugees Convention. There will be criticism both from the left and from the right. What the government has sought to do is provide a robust, balanced response to a problem for all of us. I want to be frank with everyone around the nation that the implementation of this regional resettlement arrangement will not be smooth. We are bound to run into many unanticipated problems. We will tackle them one by one. I also want to be frank with everybody by saying the implementation of this arrangement will not be inexpensive. Acting on such a sustained challenge to border security does cost. There will be those both in PNG and Australia who will seek to attack this arrangement through the courts, which is why we have been as careful as we can in constructing an arrangement which is mindful of the earlier deliberations of the courts. And above all, I want to level with the nation by saying that the boats are not going to stop coming tomorrow. In fact, it is more probable that the people smugglers will try and test our resolve for the period ahead. It's important, however, to look how measures such as this work over the months and years ahead. We are prepared to do more. I want to be absolutely clear with the Australian people as to why we are doing this. Finally, it's for three reasons. The first is that our intelligence agencies indicate that the numbers of people seeking to come to Australia by boat will continue to increase in the future as the people smuggling industry becomes more professional and entrenched around the world. Other countries are finding it the same. Second, with each vessel that comes, there is a continued risk of drownings, and we've seen too much of this already. There is also a third reason. People smugglers try to drum up business when there is human tragedy around the world. We know this from Afghanistan, Iraq and Iran, but the international community now faces a massive new outflow from Syria. That is why the international community needs to deal with each of these new challenges in a sustainable fashion. That is why we need a comprehensive network of processing centres around the world and better and more equitable resettlement obligations around the world rather than every country simply playing pass the parcel. Therefore, the decision announced today represents one practical step forward among many that will need to be taken for the future. This is not a three-word slogan. This is a piece of hard public policy which we are working through cooperatively within our region and which must now be implemented. And we must do so calmly, rationally and with resolve. Today represents one major step forward. Many other steps lie ahead, and I thank the Prime Minister for his cooperation.